This is Everyday Tension. Real stories based on real experiences about everyday conflicts people rarely talk about. This story was shared anonymously. If you'd like, you can support the channel by liking or subscribing and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Here's what happened.
David called it his senior slump. That's what he told me anyway. He was 18, had just been accepted into a decent state school for engineering, and all the momentum he'd built up through junior year just seemed to leak away. He stopped mowing the lawn unless I asked 3 times. His laundry piled up in a corner of his room. He spent a lot of time on his phone, smiling at the screen. I knew who he was smiling at. Chloe. They'd been on and off since 10th grade, more on during that last year of high school. I never said I didn't like her. That's not true. I just never warmed to her. There was a carefulness to her, a way of watching our house, our things, me, that felt like an assessment. She was polite, always said please and thank you, but her eyes were busy, ticking off items on a list I couldn't see. I was just glad he was going to college. The slump, I figured, was just pre-freedom laziness. He'd get there, meet new people, buckle down. He was it at math, always had been. He could take things apart and put them back together. Engineering made sense. It was a relief. He'd had a rocky couple years after his dad and I split. Nothing major, just bad grades and a sour attitude, but he'd pulled out of it. I thought the hard part was over. He moved into the dorms in August. I helped him unpack, made his bed with the extra long sheets he'd rolled his eyes at me for buying. He hugged me goodbye, a quick, tight squeeze. "I'll call, Mum," he said. For the first few weeks, he did. The calls were short. Classes were fine. The food was bad. His roommate played video games too loud. Normal stuff. Then the calls got shorter, and then they were just texts. A thumbs up emoji. A yep. All good. The call from the university came in early November. A polite, tired-sounding woman from the Office of Student Success. She said she was reaching out because David had missed multiple introductory sessions for his major, and his attendance at his core classes was becoming irregular. His midterm grades were concerning. She was just calling as a standard outreach. Was everything okay at home? Was David facing any challenges I was aware of? I sat at the kitchen table after I hung up, the plastic phone still warm in my hand. I felt cold. Shocked isn't the right word. It was more like a deep, sinking embarrassment, as if I'd been caught in a lie I didn't know I was telling. My son, the engineer, he wasn't going to class. I'd been depositing his monthly allowance from his college fund into his account. Was he just spending it on pizza and beer while he failed chemistry? I picked up the phone to call him. My finger hovered over his contact. I put the phone down. I needed to think of what to say. I didn't want to yell. I wanted to understand. I made a cup of tea and didn't drink it. I rehearsed sentences in my head. "David, I got a call from the school today." No, too accusatory. "Honey, is everything okay with your classes?" Too soft. While I was staring at the cold tea, the doorbell rang. It was a Thursday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole, and my stomach dropped. It was David, standing on the porch with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, and next to him, holding a pink backpack, was Chloe. I opened the door. "David, what's going on? Is everything all right?" I looked from his face to hers. She gave me a small, tight smile. "Hey, Mom," he said. He shuffled past me into the hallway, dropping his bag. Chloe followed, her eyes doing their usual quick scan of the entryway. "We came for a visit." "A visit? Don't you have class?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice light. "It's reading week." Or, kinda. We just needed a break. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He walked into the living room and flopped onto the couch, the way he did when he was 16. Chloe sat down neatly next to him, placing her backpack on the floor like a precious artifact. My mind was racing. The phone call from the university, the duffel bag. The way they were both here, in the middle of a Thursday. This wasn't a planned visit. I followed them into the living room. "David, seriously, what is this?" He looked at Chloe. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. He took a breath. "We got married, Mum." The words didn't make sense at first. They were just sounds. Married, Mum, got, we, you. "What?" "Last weekend. At the courthouse near campus. We eloped." He said it like it was a fun adventure, a prank they'd pulled. His voice was trying for cheerful, but it came out strained. I looked at Chloe. She was watching me, her expression unreadable. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a sharp squeeze, hurt, betrayal, and a stupid, overwhelming worry about what people would think. My son got married and didn't tell me. I didn't get to see it. I didn't get to be there. His mother. I must have stood there silently for a full minute. David's fake smile started to wobble. Chloe's gaze didn't waver. I knew I had to say something, do something. The part of me that was his mother, the part that had soothed skinned knees and helped with late-night algebra, took over on autopilot. It overrode the part of me that wanted to scream. I put on a smile. It felt like a crack in my face. "Well," I said. My voice sounded thin and far away. "Congratulations." I stepped forward and gave David a hug. He was stiff. I turned to Chloe and gave her a brief, awkward pat on the shoulder. "Welcome to the family, I guess." "Thank you, Gloria," Chloe said. She didn't call me Mum. I was glad. "So, this is a short visit?" I asked, stepping back, clinging to that idea. "Just a few days to celebrate?" "Yeah, just a few days," David said, looking at the carpet. "Then we'll head back. Figure things out." I showed them to the guest room. My guest room. The one with the nice linen sheets and the quilt my sister made. David threw his duffel bag into the corner. Chloe meticulously unpacked her backpack, hanging a few blouses in the closet. I left them to it and went back to the kitchen. I poured the cold tea down the sink and stood there, my hands on the edge of the counter, taking deep, slow breaths. That was 8 months ago. The few days turned into a week. Then 2. David said they were working things out with the school. He said he might take a semester off. Chloe had been taking general courses, she said, but wasn't sure what she wanted to major in. A break would do her good too. I asked about jobs. "We're looking," David would say, but I never saw them look. I'd come home from work, I'm a paralegal at a small firm, and they'd be on the couch. The TV would be on, video games, their phones. The dishes from their lunch would be in the sink. The bread bag would be left open on the counter. At first, I cleaned up after them. I made dinner for 3. I bought extra groceries. I was trying, I think, to win back some of the closeness I'd lost with David by not exploding when he told me his news. But the weeks bled into months. December came. We had a tense, quiet Christmas. I bought them gift cards. They gave me a scented candle. January was grey and long. They were always there, in my house. Their presence was like a low, constant hum in the background of my life. The mess wasn't dramatic. It was accumulative. A mug left on the coffee table, a plate under the couch, crumbs on the counter. They'd used the last of the milk and not write it on the shopping list. They'd do a load of laundry and leave the wet clothes in the washer until they smelled damp. I started coming home later from work. I'd go to the grocery store even if I didn't need anything, just to have time alone in the car. The house, which had felt empty and too quiet after David left for college, now felt suffocatingly full. I didn't like the way Chloe looked at my things. She'd pick up a vase or a picture frame and examine it, not with admiration, but with a kind of clinical interest. She started making small comments. "This couch is really dated, Gloria." Or, "You could get a much more efficient coffee maker for about $50. It was always framed as helpful. It never felt helpful. The breaking point for me, the one that made me sit him down, was a Tuesday night in March. I'd had a long day. A case file was messed up and I'd stayed an hour late to fix it. I came home tired, wanting silence. I walked into the kitchen to make a simple dinner for myself. The sink was piled with dishes, pans crusted with pasta sauce, cheese grater bits stuck to everything, 2 glasses with orange juice residue. The trash was overflowing. And on the stove, a small pot had been left with about an inch of burnt soup at the bottom. They had obviously made lunch and just walked away. I didn't clean it. I went to the living room. David was playing a racing game. Chloe was on her laptop, scrolling. "David," I said. My voice was calm, which surprised me. "Yeah, Mum?" He didn't pause the game. "We need to talk. Now." He heard the tone. He paused the game. Chloe looked up, her fingers still poised over the keyboard. "What's up?" he asked. "You two have been here for months," I said. I leaned against the doorway, too tired to sit. "You're not in school. You don't have jobs. This can't be permanent." David's face closed off. "We're figuring things out." "Figure them out somewhere else," I said. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't soften them. "You can't live in my house forever. You need to go back to school, or you need to get jobs and get your own place. This isn't helping anyone." Chloe closed her laptop with a deliberate click. "David," she said, her voice sweet and cold, "your mum wants us to leave." "I want you to become adults," I said, looking at my son, trying to bypass her. "This isn't a hotel. I love you, but this isn't sustainable." David stood up. "So you're kicking us out?" "I'm asking you to take the next step. You're married. Act like it." He looked at Chloe, who gave a tiny, disappointed shrug, as if to say, "See? I told you." "Fine," David said, his voice thick with the teenager's hurt. "We'll talk about it later." They went to the guest room. I heard the murmur of their voices, rising and falling. I cleaned the kitchen. I scrubbed the burnt pot. I felt angry and guilty in equal measure. The next morning, the atmosphere was icy. I left for work before they got up. When I came home, they were both in the living room again. I said hello. David grunted. Chloe didn't look up from her phone. "Did you think about what I said?" I asked. "We're not leaving," Chloe said. Not to me, but to the room. Then she looked at me. "David will always be welcome under your roof. He's your son. And as his wife, I'm welcome too. That's how family works." She said it with such absolute conviction, such entitlement, that for a second I was speechless. It was my house, my roof, and she was informing me of the rules of its operation. "It's not how this family works," I said, my temper fraying. "Guests are welcome. Adults who contribute are welcome. You two are acting like permanent guests who don't contribute anything." "We contribute," David said defensively. "How? Name one way you contribute to this household besides existing in it." He couldn't. He just glared at me. Trolley gave a theatrical sigh, as if my pettiness was exhausting her. That was the new pattern. A Cold War. They stopped pretending to look for jobs. They stopped even offering to help with dishes. They lived in my house, ate my food, used my utilities, and acted like I was a difficult landlord imposing unreasonable rules. The resentment built in me like pressure in a kettle. It wasn't one big thing. It was the empty cereal box put back in the cabinet. It was the bathroom sink dotted with toothpaste flecks every morning. It was the way Chloe would say, "We're out of toilet paper," instead of, "I'll buy more toilet paper." I thought about the advice people give. Cut off the Wi-Fi, change the locks, throw their stuff on the lawn. I couldn't do it. He was my son. The image of him as a little boy, trusting and sweet, was superimposed over this surly, entitled stranger. I felt stuck, trapped in my own home by my own love for him, and by this girl who had weaponized that love. One Saturday in April, I'd had enough of the silent, oppressive atmosphere. I went for a long drive and ended up at a diner outside of town. I sat in a booth with a bad coffee and thought. I couldn't force them to want to leave, but maybe I could make leaving the easier option. If the path was smooth enough, maybe they'd take it. That Monday, on my lunch break, I did two things. I created two very basic resumes. For David, I listed his high school, his incomplete college engineering coursework, and the summer job he'd had as a lifeguard. For Chloe, I listed her high school and a brief stint as a retail cashier. I wrote a simple, honest cover letter for each. Young, married couple, seeking entry-level positions, eager to work and learn. I sent them to every now hiring listing I could find for data entry, warehouse associates, customer service reps, anything that didn't require experience. I used a new email address I created just for this. Then I went on a rental website. I found a small, cheap one-bedroom apartment in a complex on the other side of town. It wasn't great. The photos showed worn carpets and old appliances, but it was available immediately, and the deposit was only 1 month's rent. I drove there after work. The manager showed me a unit. It smelled vaguely of mildew and stale air, but it had a roof, walls, a functioning kitchen and bathroom. It was independence. I wrote a check for the deposit and the first month's rent from my savings. I told the manager my kids would be in touch to sign the lease. I gave him David's name and number. I felt like a spy or a criminal. My heart was pounding the whole time. But I also felt a glimmer of hope, a sense of taking action after months of helpless frustration. A few days later, the plan collided with reality. David got a call from the apartment manager. He took the call in the kitchen. I pretended to read a magazine in the living room, my ears straining. Hello? Yeah, this is he. Apartment. What apartment? His voice was confused. Then it changed. My mum? She did what? A long pause. He listened, his back to me. Ah, yeah. Okay, I'll have to call you back. He hung up and turned around. His face was pale with shock, then flushed with anger. Mom? Did you rent us an apartment? Before I could answer, Chloe came out of the guest room. What? She rented us an apartment, over on Maple. David stared at me, betrayal in his eyes. And the guy said something about resumes? What is going on? I put the magazine down. I found you a place to live, and I helped you start the job search. You need both. Now you have a head start. Chloe's composure shattered. You did what? Her voice was a shriek. You went behind our backs? You applied for jobs for us? Who do you think you are? I'm the person who pays the mortgage here, I said, standing up. My legs felt shaky. I'm trying to help you launch your life. Together. As you keep reminding me you are. This isn't help, David shouted. This is sabotage. You're trying to break us up. You've never liked Chloe, and now you're trying to force us out so you can have me to yourself again. His words were a physical blow. That is not true, I said, my voice low. I want you to have a life, a real one. Not this limbo in my living room. Chloe stepped forward, her finger pointed at me. A good mother supports her children. She doesn't scheme against them. You're refusing to look after your own son in his time of need. What kind of mother does that? The guilt she was trying to drill into me hit its mark, but anger overrode it. He's not a child. He's a married man. My job was to raise him to be independent. Letting him lie on my couch indefinitely is the opposite of that. It's failing him. "You're failing him right now," she cried. "We're a family. We stick together. You're throwing your family away because you're selfish." The argument spiraled. It was awful. Tears, accusations, old grievances dragged up. David kept saying I was trying to ruin his marriage. Chloe called me controlling and manipulative. I just kept repeating, "You need your own space. You need to stand on your own feet." It ended when David, red-faced and crying angry tears, yelled, "Fine. You want us gone? We're gone. Happy?" He stormed into the guest room. Chloe followed, shooting me a look of pure venom. I stood alone in the wreckage of my living room, shaking. I heard the sounds of furious packing, zippers, drawers slamming. 20 minutes later, they emerged, carrying their bags. David wouldn't look at me. "David, please," I said, my resolve crumbling. "Take the apartment. It's paid for. Go and start your life." "We don't want your life," Chloe spat. "We'll figure it out ourselves. Without your help." They walked out. The door slammed. The house was suddenly terribly quiet. I sat down on the couch, the same couch they'd spent months on, and I cried. I cried from relief, from guilt, from fear, from loss. I had done it. I had gotten them out. And my son now hated me. That was 3 weeks ago. David didn't answer my calls for the first week. Then he answered, once. His voice was flat. He said they were staying with a friend of Chloe's. He said not to contact him. He needed space. I asked if they had jobs. He hung up. I drive by that apartment complex sometimes. The unit I rented is dark. The manager left me a voicemail asking when the tenants would sign the lease. I had to call him back and explain, my face hot with shame, that they wouldn't be coming. I lost a deposit. That's fine. It was worth the price to try. The house is clean. The bread stays fresh in the bag. The milk lasts. The quiet is back. But it's a different quiet now. It's heavy. It's filled with the ghost of that argument, with the echo of the door slam. I don't know if what I did was right. People tell you to set boundaries. They tell you not to enable. It sounds so clear when it's someone else's kid on someone else's couch. When it's your own son, the math gets fuzzy. Love and responsibility and guilt get all mixed up. Did I help him? Or did I just prove his new wife right, that I was an obstacle to their life together? I think about him all the time. Is he eating? Is he safe? Is he happy? The logical part of me says he's an adult. He made his choices. The mother part of me just aches. I wanted to give him a push toward being an adult. I'm afraid I just pushed him away. I keep my phone charged and on the loudest ringer, just in case. He knows where I live. The door isn't locked during the day. I wait. I clean my already clean house. I try to read. I listen to the quiet. It's over, but it doesn't feel over. It feels like I'm just waiting to find out what happens next, and I have no say in it at all.